Hello, everybody. I'd beat this gavel, but everybody was already quiet, waiting in anticipation, so I'm glad y'all are here. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Wednesday, November 3rd, Carteret County Board of Education meeting. I see two young adults in the crowd. I hope y'all had a great Halloween. My daughter asked me yesterday if I could start setting up the Christmas tree, so I told her no, but that's right around the corner. To start off the meeting today, just some quick housekeeping stuff. We've got a lot to do tonight. We've got a lot to go over, and when we get to public comment, if we could just be thoughtful and respectful to whatever we're talking about, whatever we want to comment about, I truly appreciate that. We live in Carteret County, awesome county, and we love each other, so let's just keep doing that. With that said, I'm going to call on the most incredible elementary school principal in Beaufort to call up her students for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, everyone, and I think we have two of the best-looking students in the county who are right here. I have Cole Kate, who is a fifth grader at our school, and then I have Cadence Williams, a third grader, and they are so excited and proud and privileged to be able to lead our Pledge of Allegiance tonight. So if everyone would stand, they're going to come up to the podium to lead us.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you two so much. Y'all did a fantastic job. Hey, we've got something we want to present to you. We've got something we want to present to you. Let's make sure I get it to the right people. This is for you. I truly am proud of you. You did a great job. And this, my friend, is for you. You did a great job too. Thank you so much. I'm so
Nice
proud.
job.
Good job.
You stand right here. Okay, you stand right here. There we go, there we go. Thank y'all so much. All right, now we've got the Reverend Dennis Goodwin, who's going to give us the invocation.
Let's pray. Father, you have truly blessed this school system with good leadership, with good teachers, with good support personnel, with good students, with good parents, and a good place. We acknowledge all of that tonight, and we pray your blessing on this time that we spend together. In our Lord's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, thank you. Next up, I'm going to ask Dr. Jackson to go to the podium. We've got a lot of people to recognize for doing some great things in the community, and I'm going to ask all the board members to come stand out here because we're going to shake hands and be happy about all these great people. You just stand right there and turn around and grab off the top.
Good evening, board members and all who are gathered. We certainly are quite honored to recognize some amazing students, community members, and folks who are making a tremendous difference for our students. I'd first like to invite forward Mr. Jake Joplin, who is the CEO of the Carteret Craven Electric Co-op. Mr. Joplin, if you'll come join me. Board members, I'm excited to share with you that Carteret Craven Electric Co-op annually provides Bright Ideas grants to teachers in Carteret County Public Schools. These grants have been used over the years to buy books, science equipment, robots, art supplies, etc. The instructional materials funded through the Bright Ideas grants have made a tremendous difference for students and teachers. Carteret County teachers were awarded over $16,500 this year, and Mr. Joplin and his team personally delivered those on one of the big bucket trucks, and we were quite excited to have the bucket trucks in front of our schools. Since 1994, Carteret Craven Electric Co-op has provided over $559,000 in Bright Ideas grants to our teachers. Mr. Joplin, on behalf of our school system, thank you so much. I believe it's
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Sir. Thank you very much. Sir. Okay.
Turn around and stand with the crowd.
Let you stand right in the middle, Mr. There we go.
You can stand in front of Travis.
Okay, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Board members, at this time, I'd like to recognize a couple of our students, Mosh Thakor and Davis Starling, if they'd come forward along with their advisor, Mr. Mark Thompson. Board members, I'd like to share with you that these two students competed in the FBLA Life Smarts Quiz Bowl competitive event at the National Leadership Conference and were awarded second place in the entire country. Their advisors, Mr. Mark Thompson, gentlemen, we're so incredibly proud of you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. We insist. It's mandatory.
Don't stand in front of Travis.
Everybody smile.
Good job.
West. Board members, at this time, I'd like to invite forward White Oak Elementary School Principal Terry Brett and some of her team members. In the last couple of weeks, we had the incredible honor to join a virtual presentation, so we're glad to be able to do this in person. White Oak Elementary School was one of only 3 schools in the entire state to receive a Whole Child Award from the North Carolina Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development, NCASCD. The school was recognized for the way they start every morning supporting students with social-emotional learning through Adventure to Fitness, Second Step, and the Sanford Harmony curriculum. Our PE teachers also do a great job teaching the Botvan Life Skills program, a drug and violence prevention program to promote mental health and positive youth development. In addition to teaching about food nutrition, the school also emphasizes farm-to-table foods for students to learn where their food comes from and how it gets to school. And again, one of only 3 schools in the entire state to receive this award. Congratulations.
One, two, three. Gotcha.
Great.
I drove here. I drove pretty fast.
Carteret County Public Schools Teacher of the Year, Mr. Peterson. Absolutely. That's right. Board members, at this time, I'd like to recognize one of our great partners who's going to share a recognition with you. I'd like to invite forward Ms. Kristen Riddle from the Eastern North Carolina market for the American Heart Association. Ms. Riddle?
Thank you guys for having me tonight. So just going to talk off the cuff about someone very special to the American Heart Association. Again, we're recognizing White Oak Elementary and a fantastic teacher that I've had the pleasure of working with for the last 12 years at my time with American Heart Association. She has 20 years of service with us, raising $180,000 for the American Heart Association, which is remarkable. I was telling her today that I just presented an award earlier this morning, and someone had the exact same amount of years and had raised 30. So 180 is amazing. Her commitment to the Heart Association has been remarkable. She's become a good friend of mine. And so, I think our partnership started, for her, it's a personal reason. A family member having heart disease, and so it's just kind of continued. Now the school, they just, the Whole Child Award, that's something that we as well do. We're always trying to incorporate that, and that's something that Kathy Hines also did. So I'd like to present this award to Kathy Hines, and
Miss Hines, keep on backing up. I can do it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Katie just said Miss Hines was the White Oak mosquitoes.
oh, see?
I'm not there anymore.
Congratulations. Board members, we have one more recognition, and at this time, I'd like to invite forward our finance department to join me, if that incredible team will come forward. Board members, quite frankly, I have, in all my years of service, never heard of a group achieving at this level. I'm incredibly proud to share with you that for the 28th consecutive year, 28 consecutive years, the Carteret County Public Schools Finance Department has earned 2 national awards. The first, the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. The second, the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting Award from the Association of School Business Officials. Both awards recognize their tremendous work in transparency, in comprehensive reporting to the community. And again, we're so proud that for 28 years in a row, they've received both of these national awards. And Ms. Wheatley, there's actually 2 of them there. So we'd like to congratulate our finance department. Congratulations.
Don't come get in the picture. Mandatory, remember. Thank y'all so much.
Watch this.
Yeah, that's wicked.
What about it? Yeah, I took it. Little piece of foam. Been bad.
Clear them out.
Well, that was exciting. Board members, now we're going to move right on, and I am looking for a consideration of approval of the meeting agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Reverend Goodwin has moved to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Chadwick has seconded. All in favor, raise your right hand. Very good. The meeting agenda has been approved. Now I will have Miss Kathy Carswell come back up and give us the audit report. All right, nope. Or whichever one of y'all is doing it.
I was going to introduce.
Okay, you introduce?
I'll introduce myself.
Well, my bad,
gets your
this is
name right.
Adam.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not going to say your last name.
My name's Adam Sapirk. I'm a partner with Anderson Smith Hvac, your independent audit firm hired to conduct the audit of management for the year ended June 30, 2021, and these financial statements that are in front of you are the product of that audit. There is a three-party contract between the board, us, and the local government commission to conduct that audit, and they actually review these financial statements. The audit has been submitted to them, but not yet reviewed. So it's currently under review by their status, but it's still free and clear for me to present to you tonight. The audit also, I've got in front of you a little 3-page letter just addressing the board, letting you know how the audit went. If there were any unusual items or difficulties conducting the audit or anything, even just new GASB pronouncements, we would have disclosed those in that letter to you. Fortunately, there's nothing unusual. All the new GASBs have been pushed back to next year. There was no difficulties conducting the audit. The audit went as planned. The timeline went as it has the last several years. We come out in May and conduct an audit of compliance over your major state and federal programs. Then we come back in September and finish the compliance audit and then audit the financial statements as of year end, June 30, and then provide these statements. So that 3-page letter just lets you know there's no unusual items this year in the statements or in the audit. Now, the bound blue booklet is a 73-page puzzle that I'm going to go over a couple of pages with you, just point out what I think are the most important pages. The requirements now for these statements, they grow. They grow every year with new pronouncements, new information to add. It's really kind of a tale of two financial statements. You have your government-wide statements, and we've talked about this in the past. That includes the value of your assets, the liabilities that are related to the pension and post-employment benefits that are really liabilities of the state, but your portion is reflected within these statements. And so those are what are called the government-wide statements. And then there's also the fund statements. Those haven't changed in 20 years. Those are the same. Fund balance is still the same. Cash is still the same. And to me, those are the most important items to really note. So if you could read through those first 10 pages, you just have to take note whether you're reading about fund balance or you're reading about net position, because net position is a government-wide term. And your net position for the year is negative $26 million. Well, that doesn't mean anything. You are not financially in the hole by $26 million. That's just a product of these giant employment or post-employment and pension liabilities that your portion of are reflected within these statements. So again, whenever you're reading through any of this, definitely note whether you're looking at net position or fund balance, because those are two different numbers. To me, the board and management really care about net or fund balance. That is how much money you have available, in the coffers. How much did you make this year? Your change in net position is, again, mostly a factor of how much pension liability went up or down. So if you turn to page 14 and 16, to me, are the two most important pages in the booklet. Page 14 is the balance sheet for your governmental funds. You have your general fund, your state public school fund, federal grants, other special revenue, capital outlay, and individual schools. Now, your biggest sources of revenue, your state public school fund, and also one of your smaller sources of revenue, your federal grants fund, they actually don't carry fund balance. So all the fund balance is located in your general, other special revenue, capital outlay, and then the funds at the individual schools. So the first column there is your general fund balance sheet, cash on hand, $5.1 million at the top, and at the bottom, your fund balance number of $5,299,000. That's an increase of $1.7 million from the year before, and of that $5.3 million of fund balance, $600,000 of it is in the form of inventories. That's not cash, not spendable. You've already spent that money, but you have inventory on hand to use for future repairs and future maintenance. $199,000 of that fund balance is restricted by state statute for receivables and encumbrances. Basically, at the end of the year, you have open POs that you're going to get ready to pay. Those are encumbered, cannot be appropriated in the 2021-2022 fund budget. So they're automatically restricted and set aside to pay the first couple of invoices that come in the next year. And then you have management assigned fund balance of $1,438,000 assigned for next year's budget. These are basically the funds expected to be used, the fund balance expected to be used according to the 2021-2022 budget, an estimate, so to speak. You're not held to it by any means, but it is just a planned budget assignment. And so leaving you with $3 million of unassigned fund balance, which compares to about $1.7 million of last year being unassigned. So there was a significant increase in fund balance, like I said, $1.7 million. But I was looking back as far back as I could on the audits that I've been on recently, and I look back in 2012, June 30, 2012, you actually had $5.4 million of fund balance. So even though you had a significant increase, you are still in the realm of fund balance that you've seen in the last 10 years. These fund balance seem now, with the pandemic and looking back even further, back in 2008, are funds almost like a cycle. You have this ability to add money to fund balance because of an increase in federal funds, and you take that opportunity, and then when those federal funds are gone, the requirements to maintain some of the expenditures that those created will fall back on you, and fund balance will go back down over the next several years. That's a cycle that we're now seeing with two global crises in a row. So again, $5.3 million of fund balance by no means is out of the realm of your recent history. You also have $1.8 million of fund balance in the other special revenue fund. These are the funds that used to be included in local funds but have been portioned out because they represent special programs, some of them state, some of them federal, some of them just local, some technology fees. Basically, anything that doesn't come directly from the county now ends up in the other special revenue fund. So it also carries fund balance, and that fund balance went up this year by $300,000 to that $1,855,000. Capital outlay has $10 million of fund balance, but only $165,000 of that is really yours. So several years ago, you received Hurricane Florence funds. Those funds are restricted for use for only repairs related to hurricanes, and you still have $9,719,000 of those funds left. Now, those funds were given to you and have to be paid back to DPI, and any funds that you receive from FEMA or insurance would offset the cost of those repairs first. And so the last portion that you're able to spend, being this state or this DPI $10 million that you have left to pay back. So basically, they fronted you some money. You made your claims, you did your repairs, you got reimbursed by insurance, and anything that you don't spend of those state funds after, again, crediting back the insurance and FEMA, again, has to be sent back to the state. So we've restricted that fund balance. So you see in that column, $9.8 million of fund balance, but $9.7 million is restricted for either other repairs related to that hurricane or sending back to DPI when those funds are required to be sent back. And so what's left is just the $164,000 of restricted fund balance, restricted for use of capital outlay only. That is essentially your fund balance in that fund. And then there's $1.2 million across all your schools for their funds on hand, and that went down $40,000 this year. Any questions about your, again, governmental fund balance? Really, to me, the most important page.
Does anybody know if we have anticipated repairs coming up here for that 9.7?
I believe not to the tune of 9.7.
We've been reimbursed.
Yeah, the state sent out that money. There was I think it was 10 to 12 districts that got this money. They got it for various reasons. Some of them just needed the cash to pay bills. They had water in buildings, and they had ServPro in there wanting to get paid before they did any more work, and insurance wasn't ready to pay out. So the districts hardest hit by Hurricane Florence received funds up front with the intent that it would cover anything that wasn't covered by insurance and also to help cash flow. So a lot of your issues and repairs were covered by FEMA or insurance, and that's why you still have 9.7 million of this left. You used it up front, but then received insurance checks, throughout the last few years.
When is that to be paid back?
I believe it's 2025. DPI stays in touch with the districts that got it, but it's 2025. And it is becoming obviously more and more difficult to get approval to spend that money because we're so many years removed now. So again, your future plans to spend it just aren't going to total 9.7 and shouldn't. I mean, it's those repairs have been made. Now you're just really in the stages of verifying that there's no other structural or hidden costs related to those damages. So again, you're just not going to be able to spend that 9.7.
And when it's gone, there'll be 165,000.
That's right. Okay. Yep. And because that's a lot of your capital outlay funds are on a reimbursement basis from the county. So you end up with a project, they pay for it, and so you have very little capital outlay funds on hand carrying over. The next page, page 15, not as important, but it is kind of show you how we get from fund balance to net position. So you see at the very top, $18 million, that's your total governmental fund balance. And all of these factors get you to that negative $26 million net position. Most of these related to accounts related to pension and OPEB benefits, as well as your fixed assets, the value of buildings, net of depreciation. So,
OPEB,
other post-employment benefits, your
Medicare supplement.
the retirement health care, and disability income and death benefit. The two that are actually recorded are the disability income and the retirement health being the biggest portion. It creates the biggest liability. It's a giant unfunded mandate.
Mr. Chairman, let me say that for years now, I have had objections to the way this is reported because this is not a liability of the Carteret County Public School System. It is a liability of the state of North Carolina. I initially thought this was a way that the state was kind of shuffling off some of its debt to the counties, at least for accounting purposes. But I don't really think that's what it is. You are a political subdivision of the state of North Carolina, and I think that this, as much as anything, is a way that the state can account for what its liability is to the retired employees. But these large figures here are not obligations of the Carteret County Board of Education or the taxpayers in Carteret County. They're state obligations.
The state still has these liabilities on their CAFR. Nothing changed, it just added to yours. But the GASB writes standards to capture every type of government across all 50 states. And North Carolina is set up different than Illinois. So if the Chicago Board of Education offers an employment benefit to retirees, the rules have to capture the cost of that benefit. If the department or the Board of Education for Chicago says that every person that retires, they'll get $2,000 for the rest of their life, that liability has to be captured, and the GASB wrote standards to force them to capture that, but it also captures your liability, your portion of a state benefit. Again, there's other post-employment benefits that could be offered and are offered across various states, various forms of government. I think this is more of a reaction to some poorly managed governments that have the possibility of failing, have run out of money. They write these standards for everybody, and again, even North Carolina with a 86% funded pension plan still has to conform and present those liabilities within each individual government's respective percentage of that giant liability. Now again, the health insurance plan is not so well funded. I think it's about 6.5%, but it's still, your portion of that is a giant liability that you won't have to pay.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Regarding, one last thing about this, so the state liability, the state auditors actually select a sample of governmental units every year to have an audit done of basically their orbit system. That's where you report all of your employees, ages, genders, years of service, how much they're paid, how much is withheld in retirement. The state auditor selects a sample and requires that sample to be either tested by the state auditor or tested by their independent auditor. This year, you were selected to be audited. We conducted that audit in the spring, submitted it was just a one-page opinion letter that said, in our opinion, you conformed with the orbit requirements, and that opinion was accepted. So you were, again, selected for the orbit audit. Again, that's basically the system that compiles all the data of individuals that then goes to the actuaries, who then calculate what the true liability is going into perpetuity. So,
One question.
yes.
These unfunded liabilities, are they going up or down or just leveling?
One went up, one went down. The pension liability is going up.
Okay.
The retirement health benefit liability went down. And it goes down, again, it's an actuarial calculation. It goes down just because somebody thought, you know what, I think on average, a 71-year-old male today is going to live 19.3 years instead of 19.1 year. I mean, that critical and that minute, and you just change one little assumption, and even just how the market reacts, how insurance costs react. There's all these factors that play into that calculation. So the retirement health benefit went down, but the pension liability went up. Page 16 is Exhibit 4. This is the income statement for those governmental funds. And, I already went over the numbers, but you can see across the top there, your general fund revenues of $24 million, state public school fund, almost $53.5 million, federal grants fund, $6.7 million, other special revenues, $3.4 million, and capital outlay, $3.6 million. Then you have your expenditures, and at the bottom, you have that change in fund balance, like we said, $1.7 million increase on the general fund, $300,000 increase on the other special revenue fund, and a decrease of $386,000 on the capital outlay fund, but that was really just a decrease in the hurricane portion. That $165,000 has been about that number, slowly creeping up for the last few years. So again, $5.3 million total fund balance at the very bottom on the first column, and $18.2 million total, but again, $10 million of that really isn't even yours. Any questions about that income statement? Again, the increase this year, the $1.7 million, there was an increase in prior year. There are what are considered COVID savings, the cost of savings of not having to transport all the same kids every day. This year's increase is more driven by the federal funds received. You received $2.4 million of education stabilization funds and $930,000 of coronavirus relief funds. Those are both federal pots of money received to help offset the cost of operating a school system during a pandemic, and that offsetting revenue does help you increase your fund balance. So every district I've been at this year has added fund balance, and $1.7 million is by far not the biggest, and it is not the lowest. So I've seen city districts that have added $1 million and large districts that have added $10 million. So across the board, districts are adding fund balance. Again, utilizing those federal dollars to help offset some of the cost of the pandemic. And there are also cost savings. This transportation still, usually is recognizing savings, and also all the vacancies in positions across the state, create less expenditures. All right. After that, there's some budget versus actual schedules. You had no budget violations. Page 22, Exhibit 7, is the balance sheet for the one other fund that you have. The one business type fund you have, the school food service, child nutrition fund. This fund actually has to record their portion of the pension and the retirement benefit liability directly in their fund. Because they're a business type fund, they report on a different accrual basis. And so every revenue and expense, every asset and liability recorded directly in the fund on an accrual basis. So you have the capital assets, you have the liabilities for pension and OPEB, and so you have a negative $1.4 million of fund balance. That is not reflective, again, of the financial position for that fund. You really have to look at cash as the main judge of financial stability, and you've got $1.7 million of cash on hand, and that compares to $1.7 million of cash on hand last year. Now, you can manage cash flow. Just because you had $1.7 million in the bank both days on June 30 isn't necessarily reflective of a flat line. When you look at cash, you also can look at receivables. So your cash, while it stayed the same, your receivable, which the biggest one is from DPI for your June meals served. So that receivable this year was $100,000. Last year was $270,000. So you maintained a flat line cash, but your receivable went down. So you did actually use or utilize some of your current assets. When you look at the change in fund balance, it was only $86,000 decrease. That $86,000 decrease includes the changes in that pension. There is a back schedule on page 61. It's a non-GAAP schedule, so it's like modified to take out all of the revenues and expenses related to pension and contributed capital and depreciation, and it puts it all below the line. So page 61, 2/3 of the way down, before all these reconciling items, in the middle column, you have this excess, this revenues and expense versus expenses. Actual is negative $151,000. To me, that is a true or truer change in fund balance related to operations, not related to capital, not related to pension or OPEB. So that mirrors that change in receivables. So you did have a slight usage of current assets, is my point, of about $150,000. Again, that is not a bad year when you recognized a $1 million decrease in revenues. Your food sales were $8,000 this year compared to $448,000 the year before. Your federal reimbursements, $3.2 million compared to $4.1 million. Those are significant declines in revenue. You have to manage that by taking significant cuts in salaries. Your food costs are totally different because you're serving totally different meals. So to be able to operate a kitchen in a pandemic where you're serving kids half the amount of time you used to only use $150,000 of your $2 million of current assets is not a bad operational year. So. Page 23, Exhibit 8 is the income statement as presented in normal terms. You can see again that food sales of $8,000, food costs $1.1 million, salaries and benefits $1.9 million, and the change in net position of $87,000. The cash flow statement is behind that. Again, cash being one of the good judges of financial stability and child nutrition. And then in that middle page, you can see where cash went up $16,000 from $1,658,000 to $1,674,000. That's on page 24. But again, most of that change was really related to the biggest thing you don't see there is that change in receivable. So. After that, there are 20-some pages of footnotes about all of your accounting policies, a little bit more detail on all of your assets like receivables, cash, charts on your fixed assets, 10 pages of information about the actuarial studies for the various pension and OPEB plans. There's even charts for those liabilities. If you want to turn to page 51, so this is a 8-year chart of the pension and your percentage, basically. So your proportionate share of that state liability is 0.32%. You know, 1/3% creates a $39 million liability. When you look back at 2014, that $39 million liability was a $19 million liability. So a significant increase in that actuarial calculation. But also, this chart shows you kind of a little history of your covered payroll. So in 2021, your covered payroll was $49.7 million. Compared to 2014 of $45.2 million. That is not a significant increase. I mean, it's $4 million, but when you factor in all of your salary increases over those years, basically you can see here, you've slowly trended up. There are districts, some of them rightfully so because they're significantly growing, and some of them just because of poor hiring choices, getting themselves in fund balance trouble. Salaries is your number one expenditure, so managing that is the number one goal for managing a school system. So. After all the financial statement schedules and notes, page 62 starts the compliance part of the statements. So page 62 begins basically 3 letters, 1 letter on internal control, 1 letter on federal compliance, 1 letter on state compliance. All 3 of these considered clean, unmodified opinions, and the internal control letter basically saying that we noted no significant deficiencies in internal controls. So again, 3 good opinion letters. This year, for federal compliance, we audited Title I, the Education Stabilization Funds, which were related to COVID-19, and the Coronavirus Relief Funds, which were related to COVID-19. Those were the federal major programs and the state programs that we audited for compliance. The State Public School Fund, which has to be audited every year, and then the CTE program, the months of employment. State and federal programs have to be audited once every 3 years, except for the State Public School Fund that has to be audited every year. And the coronavirus relief funds were designated as high risk, have to be audited every year for compliance. Not sure whether the education stabilization funds, which are the bigger pot, the ESSER funds, if those will be designated as higher risk next year. But if they will, we'll audit them as well as required. And that's it.
Fantastic. Any other questions or thoughts? Wonderful. I'm looking for a motion to consider audit report.
I move to approve the audit report as presented.
Reverend Goodwin has made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Day has seconded it. All in favor, raise your right hand. Very good. You did a fantastic job. Your knowledge is excellent. We appreciate you.
Yep.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Mr. Perry Harker, who is the chairman of the Carteret County Public School Foundation, here to join us tonight.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I hope everyone is doing well. As stated, I'm Perry Harker, Chair, Carteret County Public School Foundation, and I'm here tonight to give you a brief update and overview of the foundation. We are required in our bylaws to annually update the board, and that's what we're going to try to do tonight. The foundation was founded in 2010 with a mission to promote excellence in education by supporting students, teachers, schools, and educational programs. Our focus has been and will continue to be to enrich education for all students, supporting faculty, encouraging support of public education by securing funds for innovative projects that cannot be used with your local, state, and federal dollars. So since 2010, the foundation has been donated nearly $1.6 million. And of that $1.4 million, we have invested in our school system programs and our students and in our employees. The foundation is a volunteer board served by 12 members, and we have 3 ex officio members. It's a 501c3 nonprofit, provides a tax deductible way to support the public school system. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank you for consideration of reappointment to board members that you have on your consent agenda tonight. We appreciate that greatly. So the foundation accepts and administers donations for either specific or general purposes. For example, a donor can designate that a gift be used for a particular school, for a particular subject, and used for students that have a need. Or it can be designated that it will support employees for their needs. And certainly we also have funds that are designated to support students and their families and needs that they may have. Donations are also received as undesignated, and we're judicious and make sure that those funds are used to support the mission of the foundation. Now, we have benefited from 2 very successful fundraisers and dinners this year. The first was Shine Your Light in May, which was held at 34 North, well attended. I'm saying the board did that, but really Catherine Chadwick and her team did it. Board's just taking credit for it. But great, it was outstanding. We appreciate your work on that, Catherine. The second was Dining on the Docks, which was held last month. That was a Beaufort wine and food event. They chose the foundation to not only highlight the work that we do, but all funds raised at that event will be donated to the foundation. As you know, we've started the Grow Your Own Teacher program or Teaching Fellows program that will offer high school seniors scholarships so that they can pursue a degree in education and then return to Carteret County to teach in our public school system. We see many, many benefits to this program, but 3 I just want to highlight. The data supports that when you talk to students and families, the number one issue preventing them from going to college is cost. This program will eliminate the majority of that cost, and in some instances, all of that cost associated. So it will open the door for students who want to attend college. Second will be not as measurable initially, but certainly down the road. We feel like it will re-energize interest in teaching. So not only is there a teacher shortage, there's a teacher shortage in students wanting to pursue teaching as a career. So we feel like the work that we would do to promote it, the work that the school system would do to internally promote it, hopefully would generate more interest for students that want to pursue teaching as a career. And the third, certainly over time, we think it will create a pipeline of teachers for our school system. So we're very excited about the program. The foundation's excited about our future. We're hoping in the next few weeks, we're going to have an exciting announcement to make. I want to end by thanking you for your service on the Board of Education, and thank you for your support of the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harker.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harker. All right, next up, we're going to have the public forum, and before we get to that, this is the time I get to read this long green sheet. It is now time for public comment. Anyone present tonight wishing to make comment should have filled out a public comment form. To ensure civility, relevance, and time management, there are specific requirements for public comment set forth in school board policy. They include: comments are limited to matters pertaining to public education. The speaker shall state his or her name at the beginning of his or her comment. Speaking time will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Assistant Superintendent Richie Paler is our timekeeper. He will hold up a yellow card when the speaker has 30 seconds left and a red card when time has ended. For civility and decorum, no speaker shall make obscene remarks or issue personal attacks or insults. No complaint against a school employee or student will be permitted, although this may be heard in closed session at a later date following consultation with the superintendent. Much information about individual students, including a speaker's own child, is confidential under state and federal law, and we discourage and often prohibit such information in open session. The chairperson may immediately terminate any comments that violate these rules. Board members will not respond to questions except occasionally to request clarification. With that introduction, our first speaker tonight is Mr. Ken Riley.
Good evening. My name is Ken Riley, and my wife and I are the tremendous champions for the Carteret County School System. And in a personal capacity, I work with the PAC. I serve on the PAC at West Carteret High School. So I'm here tonight. I've written some comments, and I'll keep the time for efficiency. My comments tonight are specific to the request for additional coaching and staff for athletic programs at our area high schools. Winter sports season has begun. And as our schools have grown, we've seen a reduction in some staff for some of our sports. I can share observations from West Carteret High School, but I know that this affects sports at other programs. And just ask that you respect the needs assessments that are coming forth with our athletic directors programs. West Carteret and Croatan wrestling programs each have really large programs. My daughter wrestles at West. West supports a fully integrated West wrestling program with men and women, varsity and junior varsity. West currently has about 35 athletes on their roster, and we're expecting several more when football season concludes. The wrestling team currently has a head coach and assistant head coach to lead, mentor, and supervise those athletes, which is a full contact sport. The bottom line for my request is that is for the health and safety of our athletes. Specifically, we need more coaches and assistants to ensure safety in practice and ensure safe guidelines are followed when accidents happen. We need more coaches and staff for wrestling matches because often at our matches we run 3 matches simultaneously and each match requires a coach on the mat. If a wrestler does not have a coach, the match may be forfeited. We need more coaches because of just the busy schedule of having varsity and junior varsity matches, tournaments, and conferences, covering those matches as I previously stated. And then beyond that, we have women's events that are occurring. And women's wrestling is the fastest growing sector of high school athletics in the nation. COVID-19 impacts, I just want to mention about that. We're really excited that the wrestling teams across the county are young, and that there's an influx of ninth graders and wrestlers that did not wrestle last year as a result of COVID impacts. And these are inexperienced wrestlers, and they need the additional supervision and support to train them properly. I would like to tell you just a little bit about my daughter. I'll try to respect those bits about personal information. But my daughter wrestles at West. Last year, she wrestled varsity as a ninth grader. She competed in the conference and went on to the women's high school state championship and brought home third place for our state. She was the only wrestler from Carteret County, and we're so grateful that Coach Smith and his staff could lead her on that path. I'll conclude by saying that Carteret County School Athletic Program is really the only place that she's ever learned to wrestle. She came home in 6th grade and said, "Mom, Dad, I want to try wrestling." And she's been wrestling ever since. We don't have wrestling programs. We don't do anything outside the school system. So her success is a reflection of our county programs. So I ask that you consider some of those safe health and safety considerations for our athletic programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Riley. All right, next up we have Mr. Ray Waldbusser. Did I get that right?
You got it perfect.
Perfect.
They said I'm Ray Waldbusser. All three of my kids went through the school system, and I've got 2 grandkids in there right now, so been here for a little while. Just wanted to start out thanking all of you for acting so quickly after the health department said that the threshold was breached for allowing the mask optional to take place, for acting that quickly and letting that happen starting yesterday, or Monday. So yeah, thank you very much for that. I do think there's a little bit more we can do on the quarantine criteria, and I know Mr. Whitford's talked about that before, about the legal aspects of that. One thing that we might want to do, there's a number of children who've been quarantined, and as has been said in past meetings, there's really none that we know of, or extremely few that we know of, that got sick. So one thing to consider would be, instead of sending them home, since most everybody else is unmasked in the school system now, to allow them to stay in school but be masked. So that's just something I wanted to bring up as a possibility for changing the quarantine criteria. I also wanted to thank you for the changes that are being made to some of these policies that are coming through on the second reading tonight, mostly to address critical race theory, social emotional learning. We really, as parents and grandparents, appreciate you doing this. And also for having your curriculum managers look at the different curriculums in social emotional learning, and actually, I know pulling back one of them that was found to be not very good. And we really appreciate that. One thing I would ask, if it's possible, for policy 7720, if when it's brought up, if Mr. Probst is going to bring it up, that he would read it, just so that everybody would know it and put it on the record. And then also for 3100 policy, if he could read the part that was changed in section D, just to have it on the record and allow everybody to hear exactly what the policy is, instead of just proposing it and then approving it. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waldbusser. Next up, I've got Ms. Kelsey McCormick.
As my sign reads, I will be here to encourage you all to educate and not mandate when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccines. My name is Kelsey McCormick, and I'm a junior at Croatan High School. I'd first of all like to give you all thanks for letting me speak here and for dropping the mask mandate whenever it reached below 5%. I believe that the mask mandate should be done away with completely, but I do hope this is a step in the correct direction. I'm still extremely concerned when it comes to the COVID vaccine and potential of mandates in our schools. The very divisive toolkit discriminates against those of us who are unvaccinated and pushes the vaccine in our schools. This toolkit mentions the vaccine 137 times, whereas it only mentions the masks and face coverings 65 times. We fear that masks are just the start, and so today, I'm here to encourage you, our Board of Education, to stand up against these unjust and tyrannical mandates whenever we may face them. The students of our county deserve better, and so do our faculty and staff. We have seen many county boards of education across the state, including Chapel Hill, Carborough, Orange, and Durham counties, mandating their vaccine for faculty. They have forced thousands of our schools' teachers and staff to choose between taking an experimental vaccine or losing their jobs and being unable to provide for their families. Across the U.S., school boards have mandated the vaccine for staff and students, put travel restrictions on the unvaccinated, and some have even required students to scan into school with a barcode to assure that they are vaccinated. These mandates are a direct threat and attack on our individual liberties we have as Americans. Look at Australia with their extensive mandates and camps for the unvaccinated. Is that what we can expect next in America? These mandates are also not based on the science. The mainstream media tends to engage in fear-mongering when it comes to the virus, but they still sugarcoat these vaccines. Kids quite literally have a 1 in a million or 0.001 chance of dying from the virus itself. As mentioned by the FDA Advisory Committee, ages 0 to 17 account for 0.0000002% of all COVID deaths. The Advisory Committee also added that children have the lowest percentage of emergency department visits with COVID. The fact is, healthy kids fare well with the virus, experiencing usual cold or flu symptoms. The vaccines, on the other hand, come with more detrimental and possibly fatal health concerns. These include blood clots, myocarditis, pericarditis, lung immunopathology, pulmonary edema, Bell's palsy, paralysis, sensory issues, prion disease, and other serious health issues, including death. Now, let's look at the data most recently approved almost unanimously by the FDA Advisory Panel, even though all members on the panel noted it was hard to evaluate the risk-benefit analysis since kids really are not at risk of transmitting the virus, being hospitalized because of it, or dying from it. As Dr. Rubin on the panel said himself, we're never going to learn about how safe the vaccine is until we start giving it. That's the way it goes. They plan on using us in FDA-issued post-marketing studies to show long-term safety and approval of the vaccines in the next 3 to 6 years. Until then, their goal is to keep implementing mass vaccination strategies among school-aged kids, even though there will be no long-term data on their efficacy. They are using us, the kids, as guinea pigs. Now, is that what we really want?
Thank you, Ms. McCormick.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you. Next up, we have Mr. Lee Walter.
All right. So I'm Lee Walter. Many of you know me as the suspended substitute teacher here in Carteret County and going an investigation into some activity where I was walked out of Croatan High School, And so, while there's no reason to rehash those things, I was going to provide what I would call a assessment of failures within processes and systems that I've detected, as a military officer. We do something called after-action review. We look at systems and processes in a way where we get thin-skinned and just be honest about our failures. But 2 nights ago, the script flipped, and God spoke to me, and he said, don't say any of that. This is what I want you to say. And last night, a friend called, a woman who I look at as a mother, and she said, this is what God's saying to you, and I knew I needed to say what I'm going to say to you. So I'm well known in Carteret County. I'm from Newport. I'm West Carteret, class of 93. Those who know me, you go back and ask Gordy Patrick, about Lee Walter, what you'll actually find is an insecure, broken down kid. You'll find a kid, with unresolved trauma and wounds that's covered up, by some athleticism and posturing, that it exploded in my senior year after an athletic accident, where baseball was taken away. And the next thing I know, I'm like full bore into drugs and partying. And that's where I'm known as, and what In my senior year at West Carteret, we ran the school, we ran the party culture, we spread, this kind of ideology, but at 19 years old, in a place, where, men must, go, which is looking in the insides of their heart, I had a dramatic encounter with the Lord Jesus. At 19 years old, at 4 in the morning on a large dose of acid on Fred Schnibben's sidewalk, I got hit with a wave of the love of God, and it transformed my life. What many would categorize as a new birth, through repentance and faith in Jesus. And so it's clear when I'm talking about God, I'm talking about the God of the Bible, and there's no other God. And the man Jesus is raised from the dead. He's coming to the earth. And he has a message for you. He has a message for you. And this is his message. So in Iraq in 2009, I had like an update to some of the work God had done in my heart, and went deep into a place of learning to be loved by God. And during that time period, my heart began to break for the condition of young people in America, reflecting on my condition. I never connected to young people or talked to young people, before 2010. I have no affinity for young people, outside of what became a mandate from God for me to share what's in my heart with young people. And what's coming to Carteret County, what I'm providing you right now, is an invitation from the Lord Jesus. The Lord Jesus is saying this to you. He has a plan for the Carteret County school systems, and you got to make a choice. I'll share you a little bit of his plan. 7 years ago, I'm driving into Carteret.
Mr. Walter.
7 years ago, I'm driving in.
Mr. Walter.
Shut me off right now? That's between
I do not want to shut you off. I want you to understand that we've got to be respectful. Everybody's I'm going to give you 30 more seconds, okay?
Well, I'm not going to finish in 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds.
Some background of some warnings.
I will,
No.
Mr. Walter,
No, you're fine. I understand. I respect.
please be respectful of everybody, okay?
I do. I'm cutting off right now, and the rest of this message I'll provide via Facebook Live, of what God's message is to the Carteret County school system. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Next up, we've got Ms. Barbara Smith.
Thank you for this opportunity. I also want to say how awesome y'all look without the mask on. Can you imagine how our children feel in school now? Isn't that really neat? However, when I was doing my research and everything, I discovered the kids on the buses are still having to wear masks. Why? They're the same kids that are going to class every day. Why are they wearing masks when they get on the bus, when they get off the bus, until they get off the bus? Isn't that being ridiculous? You need to think reasonable and not just think about where your money is coming from. I understand that the money, it comes from the federal transportation funding. You get money from the federal government all the time. It is in your face as to what is going on in this country. And if you do not stand up for us, you've done a fantastic job with getting the mask off. Took a bit, but we got there. But it's ridiculous. Think about it. It does not make sense. You have been given true facts from Kelsey and other people for the last couple of months. Stuff that we are researching if you're not, but you need to if you aren't. Then there was a matter of Michael Fulcher is correct in questioning a $15,000 raise for the superintendent and to be retroactive 2 months back. How many people are out of a job right now due to the pandemic? And let's face it, here again, it's in your face. It's a pandemic. How many people are losing their jobs due to these unlawful mandates? People are walking off their jobs to keep from getting the vax. And I already know that Craven County is planning on setting up vaccinated sites. It's in their budget. Is that what's going to happen here too? I was thinking Carteret County was a little bit better than what I've been seeing and hearing in Craven County. I've got grandkids there, so I'm keeping an eye on them as well. How many students are losing education due to the mask mandates and contact tracing, which has been proven useless and incorrect as well? How many students have you lost to other ways of educating them, such as homeschooling, private schools, and how many are still doing virtual? How much federal funding have you lost due to lower number of students? Raises are earned by merit, not just handed out, and with our economy the way it is, 15,000. And Mr. Auditor, I don't remember what his name was, mentioned that you need to manage salary. I think that's a good place to start. Also, $20 million given to the Carteret County Schools for PPE, 47 pages. Can you tell me what that's about?
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Lastly is Ms. Carrie Dennison.
My name's Carrie Dennison. I've never come to a board meeting, sorry. My mom was a teacher in this county for 20-something years, and I'm not talking about COVID, so that might be a relief. I'm actually talking about bullying. Myself was horribly bullied in middle school. This was 26 years ago in Carteret County, so it's a long time ago. I was hoping it was over and done with by now. I wish Ms. Wood was still here. My son actually attended Beaufort Elementary School from kindergarten through 5th grade, had almost straight A's the entire time. He's actually in Quiz Bowl and Battle of the Books now as a 6th grader, but unfortunately we had to move him to Moorhead Middle. Since then, he has been bullied since he got there. He came home one day with a black eye, swollen out to here. I have a picture. It was an accident that time, but I found out the kid that accidentally hit him in the face with his head is also related to the vice principal. I got no phone call, no email, no communication whatsoever. Now, coming from Beaufort Elementary School, they have this something called Class Dojo, which early on I was like, oh, this is so annoying. I actually wish I still had it. You knew if your son, tripped on a shoelace within 30 seconds. For my child to come off the bus like this and nobody contacted me is insane. My ex-husband and I, it's the first time we've gotten along in years, we bonded together on this. We actually spoke to, I know you said you can't say names, but the principal, who never once had any kind of written communication with us. When he spoke with us outside, away from any kind of witnesses, which I didn't think much of at the time, but then reading policies, reading things like that, I see that everything should be written. Now, Mrs. Wood, always written communication about everything, which is smart. No. So we dealt with that. He talked to us, he apologized. He thought I was upset because, I don't know why he thought I forget, it was something ridiculous. And I said, no, I'm upset because we never got any kind of communication. Nobody came to us, nothing. So, okay, that happened. A few weeks later, my son came to me and said, the kids are calling me the F word. Now, I'm not a saint, none of us are, but I don't say the F word. I have many gay friends. It's not something I say. Again, words, he begged me though. He said, Mom, last time they kept pulling me in the office, please don't say anything. Please, 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 don't say anything. I don't want to get, picked on anymore. Okay, no problem. So now last week, this little class that y'all keep talking about, the emotional learning thing, so they were doing that all week last week. It didn't help. In the locker room, my son was smacked in the face by another child. My son didn't go report it. The other kid in the locker room reported it. I found out 2 days later because we have split custody. So anyway, I found out 2 days later, Mom, they've been pulling me in the office for 2 days. I contacted the principal and I had to ask him about it. And he thought, he was very snarky to me, very rude. And I said something about my child, once again, has been hit at your school. Nothing has been done. He told me, well, we don't know who did it. He keeps changing his story. And now he's saying nobody may have hit him at all. Then 2 days after that, my son tells me, no, Mom, another child saw it and reported it. And still nothing was done. So I guess please just figure out what's going on in our school system, why people aren't being held accountable. My child should not be bullied and be hit in school. And nobody even contacted me as his parent.
Thank you, Ms. Dennison. Thank you. And that concludes public comment for the evening. Appreciate everybody coming in. Now we will move on to, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I've got a motion to approve consent agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I've got a second by Ms. Wheatley. All in favor, raise your right hand. Very good. Now we are moving on to, let's see,
to Ms. McClenny. Yes. Y'all gave me a long paper tonight, and I'm getting all discombobulated.
Good evening, Board. I'm excited to be here tonight to talk about the data that was reported from the state last school year, the 2021 school year, regarding our end of grade and end of course testing. So we're going to jump right in. I want to point out our overall score. For Carteret County Public Schools, we scored at 61.1% proficient, and to the left you will see the state average of 45.4. 61.1 is lower than what we are typically accustomed to, but based on what we faced as a district and continue to face, you can see we clearly outperformed the state and continue to rank high in the state of North Carolina. Real quick, I want to break it down even further for you. Here you'll see the North Carolina scores are the blue columns. Carteret County scores are the red columns. Here we are from grades 3 through 8 with the combined proficiency with all subjects. I will not read each of those numbers to you, but I do want to point out the significant difference between the state average and our average here in the county, anywhere between 10 percentage points higher, almost 20 percentage points higher in some grade. So our staff, our teachers, and all staff worked incredibly hard. We are thankful in our elementary schools that we were able to get our kids back sooner because we know face-to-face instruction does impact learning, and we're excited to see those scores with that. Moving on, if we look at our reading proficiency, you will again notice the red columns, being our Carteret County scores, are significantly higher than the state as we move across from that. So we are proud of that as well. Math proficiency. Math proficiency, if you look at those last, from the reading to the math, is lower. I will tell you, as a teacher at heart, math instruction is harder to do virtually, and we know our middle school and high school students had much of the year in blended learning. And so although our percentage scores there are not as high as our reading scores, they are higher than the state average in comparison with the other subject areas. Science proficiency, we do test our 5th and 8th graders, and you can see again, we are significantly higher than the state in those areas. Moving to high school in the tested areas, North Carolina Math 1 and Math 3, you will see those percentages there. Again, blue is the state, red Carteret County. Biology, we are higher, almost 20 points there. English, 71.7% proficient. I will note that there are many districts in a non-pandemic year that are not at 71.7. So the fact that our students continue to perform so well in that is outstanding. And I added our ACT and our work keys scores that were reported there as well for you to see. Again, significantly higher than the state of North Carolina. So really just wanted to make a couple of quick points for you tonight. Our elementary schools were 16.5 percentage points above the state average. That's phenomenal. And I also want to point out our middle schools, who again were not face-to-face until full-time until late March, were 13.1 percentage points above the state, and our high schools pulled in at 18.9 percentage points higher than the other high schools across the state. So that is phenomenal work, and our parents deserve a lot of credit in that as well, as they survived the blended learning environment last year. So, among 115 school systems in the state, Carteret County posted the 3rd highest district-wide proficiency rates in the state. 3rd highest out of 115. That is phenomenal work with everyone involved. And our 3rd grade students, who are also bound to the Read to Achieve law, ranked 3rd in the state, again, out of 115 in their reading proficiency. And may I point out that those 3rd graders have never had a typical school year since they entered our school system. So that is incredible work with everyone involved. And I wanted to end with this. The great motivator is possibility. We're not there yet. We have a dip from what we are accustomed to seeing. But we will get there, and we will only do it if we keep faith, focus, and believe that there is a destination. Education is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And our destination is ensuring that every student that walks through our doors walks across that stage to graduate from high school with possibilities and open doors for their future. That's all I have for you at this point. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, you guys. You've got me sort of fired up right now. I appreciate that. Uh-huh. But, all right, next time we've got Blair and Mr. Probst. Mr. Blair Probst. If you don't mind, if you'll highlight those two, 7/7/20 and.
I will try not
Thank
to
you.
put you to sleep in the process.
Okay.
All right, before you, for second read policies, there's only second read this month. The majority of these policies come from the North Carolina School Board Association Spring 2021 Update Packet. These policies revisions reflect changes in the federal and state laws, as well as mandates from North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. We'll note that the second read, there was a change to policy, might have been, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. There were some additional changes to policy 3100 by Mr. Whitford. I'm not going to read that whole policy because that's a lot to read, but the change that did occur was the removal of this last portion of that policy, and it states, as a result in age-appropriate classes where social or other theories reasonably relate to the standards of the course, faculty members are permitted to acknowledge the existence of theories, summarize what they are, and to allow their studies to discuss the theories. In so doing, the teachers should instruct their students as to generally accepted facts of the matter as supported by the textbooks and other materials approved by the State Board of Education. Further, if appropriate to the class and assignment, students are permitted to write research papers on these subjects. So that was removed from that particular policy. Policy 7720, I'll try to read that briefly. The changes, well, I won't say what the changes are, but the policy in total reads, employment or volunteer services with the school system does not preclude an individual from participating in political activities such as registering and voting, campaigning for candidates or issues, running for or serving in public office, attending political events and contributing funds to partisan groups or candidates. These political activities must not, 1, take place during work hours, 2, involve school system funds or materials, or 3, make use of an official school position to encourage or to coerce students. I'm sorry, it's a little difficult to read when it's edited. Employees to support a political party, candidate, or issue, as specified in policy 2220. Official school spokesman, the chairperson of the board or the designee, and the superintendent or designee are the official spokespersons for the school system. Employees, when exercising their rights as citizens, should take steps to ensure that their personal political activities or opinions are not erroneously attributed to the board or school system. This policy should not be construed as prohibiting the impartial study and discussion of political or other controversial issues in the classroom setting. However, employees must be mindful of their responsibilities to deliver the curriculum of the school system and may not present their personal political views to students in the classroom or when otherwise engaged in the instruction of students. That particular policy was a school board edit, so that was not something that came from us locally. So, any questions?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Probst, that section D in policy 3100, I think that's what they'd ask about reading. I think you read the stricken part, but that section. That
Would you like me to read the whole policy, the whole section D?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. D, social and other theories not generally accepted. Notwithstanding any provision in this or other board policies to the contrary, the curriculum of the Carteret public school system will not include social and other theories that are not A, generally accepted as accurate by scholars in the academic fields aligned with the subjects, and B, included in textbooks of or other materials approved by the State Board of Education. Teachers shall not teach these theories as accepted fact. An example of social political theory that is neither generally accepted as accurate or approved for inclusion in the textbooks for public schools in North Carolina is the critical race theory, or CRT. Oversimplified, CRT promotes a theory that racism is embedded in the fabric of American political, legal, social, and economic institutions and continues to be perpetuated even when measures are taken to ensure economic institutions. Oh, did I skip it? I apologize.
To ensure equality.
To ensure equality, I apologize. In addition to unaccepted social theories. There are ideologies often associated with conspiracy theories that are not permitted to be taught as fact in the Carteret County schools. Examples are the elements of the American government were complicit in the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks in the United States, or that the Nazi genocide of Jews was a myth or fabrication. Even though these theories will not be taught as factual in Carteret County schools, our students are to be taught critical thinking skills, including the ability to discern fact from opinion or fiction.
Any questions or thoughts to Mr. Probst? Very good. I will need a motion to approve this second read.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Day has made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Wheatley has made a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Very good. Great job, Mr. Probst.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we're looking at an update about our new feeder pattern parent advisory council meetings that new this year, and we are going to have Mr. McLean, Mr. Day, and Ms. Statler sort of give us an idea of how that went and some feedback.
Yeah, so typically we'll have PAC meetings, come to a monthly meeting, and everyone's here, and we go through each school. This time we've changed it to where the feeder patterns meet at one school. So Travis, Katie, and I met with White Oak, Bogue Sound, Broad Creek, and Croatan, and it was a more intimate platform. A couple of the little takeaways that we can talk about later is you got to have somebody that runs the meeting for sure. And it was very interesting to me. All of the elementary PAC parents were there. Some of the middle school PAC parents were there. And I think there was one high school PAC parent was there. So I would challenge the other feeder patterns to have more participation, and maybe that's the way it goes. But I liked the format. It was a little bit different than what I was used to, and Travis and Katie might have something to add.
No, I agree.
There you go, updated.
That was a fantastic report. Any questions to these guys? Anybody have any questions? All right, very good. We're moving on to consider to Dr. Jackson and face covering requirements.
Thank you, board members, and I'll tell you, I thought the Croatan feeder pattern, the area PAC meeting went very well because parents did have the opportunity to talk directly with board members, to ask questions and have their questions answered. Board members asked very direct questions of the parents who were there, and so from a dialogue standpoint, I thought it went very well, and appreciate the board members being there. This month, board members Mrs. Chadwick and Ms. Wheatley will be at East Carteret High School for the feeder pattern meeting there. And then next month, we'll have the West Carteret High School feeder pattern, and we certainly look forward to that as well. This evening, I'm quite delighted, quite frankly, to share with you the data around COVID-19 in our school system. I'm delighted because as the numbers go down, that means there are fewer sick people and fewer people who are dealing with COVID-19, and so we very much appreciate that. And so as you prepare for your monthly required vote for face coverings, I wanted to give you an update on where we are in terms of our COVID data. This is actually our daily student case count. These are our numbers from each school day this year for 10 weeks worth of school. You'll see that at the high point, we had 38 cases in one day. Last week, we had 6, 1, 2, 1, 2. And so the case count has gone down tremendously in our schools, and we certainly appreciate that. As we take a look at the weekly case count, you'll notice the weeks 1 through 10 across the bottom. The blue bar at the bottom is actually the 2020-2021 school year, and you'll see the cases we had last year. This year, of course, we've had many more cases as the Delta variant has been present. You'll see in week 4, approximately, we had a high point of 92 student cases that week. This past week, week 10, we were down to 12 cases, and so we've seen a dramatic decline in the number of cases. I'd like to point out a couple of moments in the first 10 weeks. This first happens right before week 6. This is our first organizational change. This was the moment the Board of Education approved a change in our exclusion policies so that at that point we no longer would contact parents if their child was wearing a mask appropriately and they were a close contact. They would not be contacted at that point. We also said we would no longer contact trace during lunch. And so the board made that decision, and of course we begin to measure as we make decisions, and we see the case count keeps coming down even after that change was made in our operational policies, indicating that that change was certainly merited and did not have a negative consequence on the cases or, as you'll see in a few moments, the quarantines that we were having. There was a second organizational change. This was actually made in mid-October. This was the change where we no longer were contact tracing in our extracurriculars. We moved forward without, we're again still not doing that contact in terms of if a student was wearing a mask appropriately. You know that we worked with the health department to ensure that the optional from the state positive antibody exception would be accepted in Carteret County. That was accepted, and so you'll see as that operational change number 2 came into being, our case count continued to go down, and so again, that metric or that change at that point did not have a negative impact on the cases in the school system, and we certainly appreciate seeing that. The final change was referenced earlier in public comments, and that was the change that was made Friday evening as we scrambled post 4 o'clock Carteret County Health Department announcement to get that change out. And at that point, the Board of Education, based on a previous decision, made mask optional or face coverings optional in our school system. And so as our case count indicates, the Board of Education has made changes throughout this school year, and those changes have eased up on some of the restrictions that we've had and actually have not had a negative consequence to that. And I feel very good about that. I feel good about the decisions our Board of Education are making in terms of the timeliness, certainly post-peak periods, and not creating additional issues. And so very much appreciate that. As we look at our student and staff exclusion count, this looks at, and of course, the name quarantine and exclusion, the nomenclature quarantine and exclusion has seem to be used synonymously. School systems and schools do not quarantine anyone. We're required to exclude when we're notified, but this is our exclusion count. And so you'll see week 4, which coincides with that peak level of case count as our highest level of exclusions. The blue bars are our student exclusions. The red bar is our staff number exclusions. And so last week, week 10, prior to the face covering change that the Board of Education had, you'll see we had our lowest exclusion numbers for the school system, with 55 students excluded, down from a high the 4th week of 609 students excluded. And so if we go back and put back in those operational changes, again, you'll see where the board has made operational changes. There was no negative consequence to those operational changes, again, indicating to me thoughtful consideration and doing our very best to make sure that we were able to back off of restrictions in a way that maintained a safe environment for all of our students and staff, and I very much appreciate that. There was some conversation earlier about our exclusion count, and so this is actually looking through yesterday at the percentage of students who were excluded from school on any day of school. Now, the title there says Student and Staff Exclusion Count. This graph is actually just students, and so this is the percentage of students in our student body who were quarantined or excluded on any one day of school. And so you'll see there in September, in fact, September 7th, which was the day after Labor Day, after the Labor Day holiday, that was our highest case count day for a daily case count. At that point, we were closing in on not quite 20% of our student body had been quarantined. As we move forward, you'll see that we're down below 1% of our student body. And so again, I'll put in the organizational changes as changes were made to exclusion policies, and you'll see, of course, the number of exclusions coming down and continuing to come down. And as the third change, which was going to the face covering optional face coverings opportunity in the school system, we've remained under 1% of our students are currently quarantined, and so that number has certainly been coming down. There's some conversation about exclusions. The exclusions don't happen, all the exclusions don't happen because of something that happened in school, what we would call a school-affected case. And so just looking at the exclusions from last week, so this is the 10th week of school, Monday through Friday last week, we had 55 school exclusions last week. You'll see 60% of those came from something outside of school. So that's a parent calling and saying, my child has been quarantined because of, we were at some gathering outside of school and was exposed to COVID-19. And so we're seeing that different from earlier in the year. Our school exclusions, 60% of our exclusions from school, 60% are coming from non-school events. This is the county positivity rate that was used by the Board of Education as the metric for when we could go to the face covering policy. And you'll see 5% was the metric that was used, and this is actually looking Monday through Friday, each day through actually through yesterday as I updated this morning. And so you'll see our county positivity rate maintaining below 5%. I do want to point out, as the board knows, there was not a metric set for when face coverings might become required. Again, that metric hasn't been set. There was simply a metric set for when face coverings would become optional. Of course, when we met that metric last week, that's exactly what automatically tripped forward. And so our current protocols as they currently stand, as you know, we're required to follow the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services Strong Schools North Carolina Public Health Toolkit. We received additional statutory references in a document from DHHS that continues to illustrate that we are required to follow the Public Health Toolkit. In our school system, these are the three operational changes that were made, and so again, September 27th, effective that day, no contact tracing during lunch, no contacting of parents of close contacts who are appropriately wearing a mask. On October 18th, effective that day, the addition I didn't mention earlier, the no contact tracing during breakfast or snack, no contact tracing during extracurriculars, athletics, or non-school events. That went into effect on October 18th, and then effective this week on Monday, the face coverings optional opportunity went into effect. We have tried through our messaging to ensure that we want our parents and our students to know that we won't tolerate bullying around a student wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. That's a decision for a parent to make along with their child, and so certainly we want to maintain a safe environment for all of our students. And so board members would be happy to answer any questions you might have about metrics.
Please go to Travis first.
And I apologize for, first of all, for my anxiousness here. I'm getting ready to leave to go teach class, and so I have to hurry. But I would very much like to see us continue the mask optional policy. I also very much like the idea of being able to allow students to remain, if they are a close contact, to be able to remain in school while masked. This is similar to what the ABC Science Collaborative is offering as a pilot program that they've already proposed. Is something that's being used in Massachusetts and a bunch of other places, a few other places, where students do not have to go home based on the very low secondary attack rate, almost minimal last year, very small this year. If these students are able to actually stay in school instead of having to go home for 14 days or whatever the case may be, then we'll make sure they're masked while they're in school, and that we're not sending anybody home. So that's what I would love ultimately to see. You know how I vote, and I have to go. I'm sorry. I'd love to keep going.
Sorry, you got to go.
Thank you, Mr. Day. We enjoy you.
Word for a class.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Dr. Jackson, I appreciate the detail that you've gone into and all the data that you've given us so we can make these decisions. So thank you for putting that report together.
Thank you, sir.
And
I'd like to say that when we have met, I don't want anyone to think anything was a rash decision. Catherine and Brittany and I have spent about 6 hours together with school nurses, with principals, going over these things. The 5% positivity rate was kind of put out as just a goal, since it has been the state goal for so long. We kind of agreed with the nurse, with the principal, that would be a good starting point. Since then, it has absolutely been pointed out that that is a piece of data that can be manipulated. Home testing has become much more prevalent since this was done, since we put this in about 2 months ago. So we're not getting accurate data by following this. So going forward, I would like to
remove the metric.
Remove the metric and not use a metric. We will reevaluate as needed. We're required to reevaluate once a month. And we have been following this. We get reports every week of the data, and if something were to happen, hopefully we are on the downhill tread of this long term, and we're done talking about this, but that we could come back to it if needed, but not put a metric on remasking.
Right, because somebody asked me today if it went above 5, were we putting masks back on? And I was like, absolutely not. So no. But I do like Travis's idea of masking up people instead of sending them home.
And I would definitely like to remove it. Look, can we go ahead and agree on that we'd like to remove the metric?
Add it into a motion.
Yes, yes.
So we'll make a motion tonight, and I would also like to, if you three don't mind getting back together one more time. I love y'all.
Sure.
But what I would like to see is a recommendation for us not to send any healthy children home anymore. So that's what I would like to see from y'all in the near future.
Yes.
Anybody else have any questions or thoughts?
I would just like to thank the 3 smartest board members for chairing that, or for heading up that committee.
Yes.
So thank you. I know y'all put a
Smartest or
lot
craziest. Yes.
I know y'all put a lot of time into it, so thank you very much.
So I am looking for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to continue mitigation strategies that are already in place in schools, to continue mask optional for students and staff, and we will evaluate and discuss as required monthly.
And I will second her motion.
I have a motion by Ms. Statler and a second by Ms. Wheatley. All in favor, raise your right hand. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson, on your report.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. And if I may, I just want to say thank you to our school nurses. All of this data is generated by our school nurses who've just done a masterful job taking care of making sure they know the status of every single student and contacting parents multiple times when this happens. So I do want to thank our school nurses as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. They've been heroes in this.
Yes.
Okay. Next up is Ms. Carswell.
Good evening. As all of you are aware, that we still do not have a state budget. However, we have, as a school system, have received from the Department of Public Instruction what is being called a preliminary projected planning budget. And so that is how I'm able to bring you our budget resolution for the 21-22 school year. This budget is based on a 5% increase for certified employees, a 3% increase for classified employees, 7.65% for our Social Security. Retirement went from 21.68 to 22.68, and hospitalization from 63.26 to 64.90. And again, I want to emphasize, these amounts are budgetary numbers. It does not reflect anything that the state has actually done. So our budget is based, this budget resolution is based on these estimated budget numbers. On the first section of the budget resolution is the local current expense budget, and it is $26,223,052. That is a 5% increase over last year's budget resolution. Section 3 is the state public school fund, in the amount of $50,400,000 $347. And this is actually a 2% decrease from what we had in the budget resolution last year. Section number 5, which is the federal grants fund, is $17,519,113, and that is a 160% increase from what we budgeted last year, and of course that's due to the ESSER's funding. Section number 7, the capital outlay fund, $2,685,000, and this is a 19% increase over what we budgeted last year. Section 9, which is our trial nutrition services, is $4,179,664, which is a 3% increase from what we budgeted last year. And the last section, that is our special revenue fund, is $3,544,766, which is a 9% decrease in the funding from last year. The total budget resolution, $104,551,943, and that is a 12% increase over the budget from last year. I present the 21-22 budget resolution, and does anyone have any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Carswell?
I do, Mr. Chair. You had told us at one time that there was a projection on, maybe it was retirement or benefits going up to, was it 40?
It was 30%.
30%. And
Yes.
I'm sorry, and we're where now?
Right now, we're currently at 21.68. Some projections that I have seen is close to the 22.68.
And the 5% local increase is predominantly retirement, state mandated increases?
Yes, that is correct.
100% or?
Yeah, almost 100%, yes.
Any other questions for Ms. Carswell? All right, I would like a motion to approve the ESSER's budget amendment.
I will move to approve.
Budget resolution as presented.
I will move to approve
Brother
the
saying.
budget resolution as presented.
I have a motion. Mr. McLean, do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second by Reverend Goodwin. All in favor, raise your right hand. Very good.
Congratulations again, and thank you so much. Your department is one of the reasons, or one of the reasons that we stay up at night, not because that's kind of out of my field of expertise. So anyway, I appreciate what you do in your whole department. So make sure you
And
tell them.
she's staying up there, so you can tell her this again after she.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I just wanted, I'll tell you just a little bit too. Thank you very much,
You're
Clark.
fine, but thank you.
I guess, well, actually, you're done, aren't you? Well, thank you, Ms. Carswell.
Well, and ESSER's.
Yes. Well, that's what I
And Ms.
thought. I mean,
Carswell,
I thought I
you thought
it's been a long meeting.
I wanted to thank you for what your department.
Due to the complexity of the federal budgets, and we have had 11 new federal budgets since last year added to our budget. And of course, as you know, just the ESSER's 2 and the ESSER 3 alone, and the ESSER 1, is over $20 million. We'd like to ask the board to agree to allow us to hire an ESSER's budget manager to help manage these federal funds that we received.
Got it.
Thank you. Does anybody have any?
Chair, I move to approve the ESSER's budget amendment for ESSER's budget manager as presented.
I have a motion by Reverend Goodwin. Do we have any questions or thoughts before we? Okay, do we have any second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. McLean. All in favor, raise your right hand. Very good. I think you're still up there.
Okay.
Yes, you are still up there about, Bubba told me to thank you again. Get a little stir cry. No, but consider the teachers covering classes bonus.
I think Dr. Jackson may be
I had
covering.
you on
Chair,
here.
but I don't want you anywhere, Ms. Carswell. We keep our experts close. Board members, as you know, school systems across the state and here at home in Carteret County have struggled with having enough substitute teachers to cover when our teachers are out. That's actually something we've been dealing with throughout the pandemic. Many of our substitutes tend to be retired teachers, and as COVID has come along, some of our retirees haven't been comfortable substituting, and so what that means is that teachers during their planning period have had to cover classes so that we had a qualified teacher in the classroom. For a teacher, if you spend your planning period covering a class, that means you're not able to spend time planning for your next instructional activities or grading papers or contacting parents, which means that our teachers are doing that late into the night. It's no question our teachers are heroic. They've always been heroic. But in this time of greater request or on their time and this need to step forward to cover their teammates as they're out to substitute in the class, we'd like for the board to consider this evening a bonus for teachers who are covering classes. We are asking the schools to, of course, try to get substitutes so that we don't have to pull our teachers from their planning period. Ms. Carswell will share with you the dollar amounts, but I will share with you that I think it's incredibly well-deserved because our teachers are pulling extra duty and then having to spend late nights working on the plans that they might have been able to do during their planning period, but they were having to cover a class. And so this potential bonus that she'll mention would give them a little bit back because we know they'll be working after hours on things they might have accomplished during their workday. So, Ms. Carswell, I'll let you go over the numbers.
What we would like to recommend is $20 an hour for each certified employee that covers a class during their planning. As I looked at the number of substitutes or classes that we had available that did not have a substitute, that's in on average of 16 teachers per day that we did not have a sub to cover that classroom. So that, you know, I'm not able to see exactly how many hours that is. Is that an elementary teacher, or is it a middle school or a high school? Because the high school, of course, may not need as much because they may not be out the entire day. But it's $20 an hour, and it's on average of 16 teachers per day that we would need to help cover those classes.
And I would mention that there's substitute funding that hasn't been needed the last 2 years because we haven't had the substitutes. So the funds are available. It's just allowing those funds to be given to the teachers who are doing the work.
That is true.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Carswell?
No, it is the same number that No Name Pizza is advertising for a job, $20 an hour.
Well, how did we come up with the $20 an hour number?
Any help?
Ann just volunteered. Is that right? Yeah.
In the past, we paid $15 an hour for tutoring after school, so we thought $20 an hour it would compensate them and get us to where we want it to be.
And are we putting this in place permanently? Just would it go year by year?
So thank you for asking the question. It would be effective November 4th, so starting tomorrow morning, and would be in place for this school year, for the remainder of the school year. And then, of course, the board could look at that going forward if it continues to be a need or something the board would like to do. But this evening, we're asking to be able to do this starting tomorrow morning, effective for this school year.
I move to approve the bonuses as presented.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Ms. Chadwick and a second by Reverend Goodwin. Any other discussion or thoughts, Katie?
I do want to say I absolutely support this, but I do think we also need to look just in general at teacher assistants and bus driver pay when we're recognizing that we couldn't do this without them, that they also are not, I don't think anyone in the school system is getting paid what they deserve, but especially them. So I think while I absolutely agree with this, we also need to look into that pretty soon.
I 100% agree. So I have for a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Pass unanimously. Very good. Thank you, Ms. Carswell. You are done now. And we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Your team, everything y'all do. Y'all are awesome. All right, moving right along. We have got Mr. Richie Paler and Dr. Jackson. I think Mr. Paler's going to come up first.
Thank you. First, I'll give you a capital update. Last we talked, paint was scarce, and we're painting Croatan, and it continues to be scarce. More painting as we get paint. I would say we're about 60% complete. I know we're lacking in the gym, the media center, and I think on the vocational hallway and some outside, but we're painting as we can get the paint. Mr. Peterson is also working on getting quotes for our playground equipment to replace the playground equipment at several of our elementary schools. All the playgrounds have received mulch, so that project is complete. LED lighting in our gyms, you know that we're replacing that. Right now, Croatan High School, Broad Creek Middle School, Newport Middle School have all been complete. And when you walk into those gyms that have those LED lights, you can tell the difference. It's great lighting, and it's cheaper, and it saves operationally, so it's good. Down East Middle School is supposed to get lights this week, and then we'll continue to go, and our goal is to replace all gym lighting with LED lighting. We have several HVAC projects that have been bid and awarded and ordered, and those include Moorhead Elementary School, Moorhead City Primary School, White Oak, Beaufort L, and Newport L. And Harkers Island, we are changing some things there with the HVAC in the gym. So some engineers are working to how we're going to do that, and that's almost complete, and it'll go to bid soon. So that's all for capital, and I'll move into the bond. So we've been working on finalizing several of the plans, but the East Carteret High School plan is almost finished for the addition on the auditorium and the gym. So very soon, like within the next couple of days, we're going to send those plans to DPI to make sure that they approve those plans. And then hopefully by the end of the month is what we're planning on, is that job will be advertised for bids. And hopefully, so that's by the end of the month, and then we're going to have a bid date by late December. So we're hoping that so that'll be the first project that kicks off. The first major project will be the East Carteret additions. So groundbreaking early next year. White Oak Elementary School gym will be the next project they go to bid, and that'll be in early 2022. And last, I've talked to you about doors, I think for the past 4 or 5 months. They're on the way, and we checked again, and we really think they're going to be here any day, and hopefully that's going to be true. But I'm not going to tell you that it is true until they get here. So, any questions on capital or bond?
Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paler. We appreciate you. All right, next up is Dr. Jackson.
Again, board members, good evening. This week, our school system moved to a mask optional environment. This decision was one that was eagerly anticipated for over 1.5 years, going all the way back to the start of last school year. While we know that the pandemic is not over and that we must not relax in our efforts to keep our students and staff safe, I do think that it's appropriate to pause and reflect on the heroic efforts we have witnessed throughout this pandemic. Our teachers and staff have been and are incredible. When we consider the many, many changes they have worked through, from taking temperatures at the doorways of our schools for everyone who entered, to moving classroom furniture to maximize social distancing, to marking hallways so that traffic only flowed in one direction, to scheduling 2 different cohorts of students to be in the buildings on different days, to offering virtual learning, to changing all of those procedures as the operational requirements from the state changed, to working through changing exclusion requirements, to where we are today with a change in the face covering policy. We've asked our team to be amazingly flexible, and they've done just that. At the same time, last year, as we literally changed every single process in the operation of our schools, from how students enter a bus to how students walk down a hallway, still, in the midst of all of that change, still, our teachers taught and our students learned, and as you've heard this evening, our students posted the third highest proficiency scores in the state out of 115 school systems. I also want to highlight the Board of Education's careful decision-making process throughout the 3 school years that have been impacted by the pandemic to date. I believe that our board deserves much praise for your even-handed approach to the decisions you have had to grapple with. I know that there have been high emotions involved, but the decisions you have made as a board have brought us safely to this moment and deserve to be celebrated. Thank you for carefully and thoughtfully making the decisions needed to safeguard our students and staff. Finally, I want to thank our parents, our grandparents, and guardians for their tremendous support. I greatly appreciate the tremendous work they did last year while our students were at home and supporting their learning. I thank them for their patience and belief in our team to make the right decisions to protect teaching and learning and to ensure that our students are receiving the very best education possible. I'm so very proud, honored, and blessed to be a part of this incredible school system. We have been, we are, and we will remain Carteret strong. Mr. Chair, this concludes my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Any board comments, thoughts, insight this evening?
I'm pleased we are where we are. And as I watch COVID around the world, I know it's not over. So a challenge before us is what new and different mitigation measures can we come up with besides masking? So if the metric goes up, what, I'm saying we have to be vigilant, and what can we do besides masking our students? Because none of us wanted that. Just a thought.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or insights?
I think it's amazing when Dr. Jackson speaks, we quickly forget, because now we're fighting, we've been fighting the mask, but we quickly forget where we were last year from walking down the hallway one way and coming back. And although, when you think back, you do remember, but it's so easily forgotten. But we really, really have come a long way. And I'm so thankful for every single person who's played a role in keeping our students in school and getting them back to school. And Dr. Jackson, you mentioned everyone else, but you've been incredibly calm during this entire pandemic. You kind of kept us level-headed, and you deserve a lot of praise as well.
Amen.
Hey, y'all gonna make me cry.
Make me cry.
It's not hard.
Anybody else have anything else to say? I appreciate y'all. I'm going to end us on a really awesome note. Obviously, I love every school in our school system. I'm a little bit partial to West Carteret just because both my kids go to school there. And it's sort of serendipitous that Mr. Riley was in here earlier talking about our coaches and across the school system and how maybe we should recognize them more. So I want to recognize our coaches, whether it's sports or band. They have a insane amount of positive impact on our kids. And a quick story, so West Carteret cross-country team was at regionals the other day, and they were projected to finish ninth. They were not projected to be good this year. They've got 2 coaches that brought the hearts out in these boys. My son's on the team, just so y'all know, in total transparency, but there's this young man named, I guess I can't say his name, but he's on the team. He's a freshman, young fella, small fella, and these coaches got this kid throughout the year. The end of the race, he ran 70 yards and passed 2 guys. He was 6th on his team, and he was fired up. And I don't know if y'all know cross country, but the top 5 people score points. But the 6th and the 7th person can actually move someone out of a place, a team out of a place. So this young freshman had no idea what he was doing by putting his heart of a lion out there. But he moved the team that was in 5th place in the 6th, which put West Carteret in the 5th, and we made it to the states.
Now I'm
That's what our coaches are doing for us. Our teachers, our coaches, our nurses, that's what's going on. They're bringing out these hearts in our kids. And if any of y'all ever gets a chance to go watch a West Carteret cross-country match, and these coaches, the way they treat them, you'll get so fired up. Anyway, with that said, We are going, I need a motion to go to a, anyway, I need a motion.
Mr.
Motion to
Chair,
move into closed session.
I moved enter into closed session to consider privileged attorney-client communications pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3 and confidential personal matters pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A6.
Man, you're good.
I have a motion by Mr. McLean. Do I have a second?
second.
I've got a second by Ms. Whately. All in favor, raise your right hand. We are in closed session. Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all hanging out this whole time.